In this video, we are going to build a full stack CRUD application using PostgreSQL, Express.js, React.js and Node.js. We'll be using 10 stack React query for data fetching and automatic UI updates. Let's delete an employee detail. After the deletion is complete, we'll see a toast message confirming that the employee was deleted. After that, the app will automatically update the data by invalidating the query, keeping the data up to date. Next, let's simulate an error. If there is an issue with the delete functionality on the backend, we'll trigger a custom error toast message. Now, when I click on the Add Employee button, a dialog will appear where I can input employee details. This same dialog will be reused for updating employee details. When I click on the update icon, the dialog will open with pre-populated employee details. Let's add a new employee. If I don't provide all the required fields, I'll get a missing field error toast message. Also, if I input an age below 18, PostgreSQL will throw age check constant error. The role is optional. It defaults to intern if not selected. Let's update an employee. If I try to update an employee with an email that already exists in our database, I'll get an error toast message because it violates the unique email constraint. So without a further ado, let's dive in and start building this app. Let's begin by setting up the backend. Open your VS Code and in your terminal, run the command npm init -y. It will initialize Node.js project. Now let's install some packages. npm install nodeman. Nodeman is used for automatically restarting the server when the code changes. Express. It is a Node.js web framework that simplifies building APIs. CRUD. It is a middleware to control cross origin. .env. It is used to load the environment variables from .env file. And finally, body parser. It is a middleware that parses the incoming request bodies. Now open package.json file. By default, Node.js project use CommonJS. However, we want to use ES module. So remove this CommonJS and type module here. Now in the root, create a file name index.js. Import Express from Express. Import body parser from body parser. Import CRUD from CRUD. Import .env from .env. Now to use environment variable, we should use .env.config method. Now let's create instance of Express module, const app, invoke Express. Also let's specify our port number, const port 3000, const course options. For now, in origin, we'll add asterisk. This means we are allowing all of the origins. Now let's pass the course option using the middleware app.use course, pass the course options. Now let's initialize the middleware with the body parser app.use body parser.json. Now let's create a route app.get / request response response.send hello world app.listen console log listening on port. Now open package.json, remove this and add dev nodeman index.js. Let's run our backend server. Npm run dev. Let's try it out. hello world. Close package.json file. We can specify all of our API endpoints in this file. However, it would make our code messy. So to avoid that, in the root, create a file name routes. Inside this route directory, create a file name employee.js. We'll define all of our employee route here. Import Express from Express, const router, express.router. Now let's specify our API endpoint router.get slash request response response.send get all employee details. Copy it. Router.post add employee details. Router.get colon ID get specific employee details. Copy this. Router.delete delete specific employee details. And finally, router.put update employee details. Now let's export it. Export default router. Open index.js. Now let's import the employee route. Import employee route from ./route/employee.js. app.use /API/employee. Then pass the employee route. We don't need this, so remove it. Now when we send the request to localhost 3000/API/employee, we will hit this endpoint. Similarly, when we request to localhost 3000/API/employee with post request, we should get this response, and so on. Now let's try it out with Postman. Let's open Postman, create collection, blank collection. Let's name it CRUD. Add request, get all employees, localhost 3000/API/employee. Click on send, get all employee details, copy and paste it. Get specific employee, copy this URL, paste it here, /1, send, get the specific employee details, copy and paste it, delete specific employee, delete. Let's save this, click on send, delete specific employee, copy and paste it, select put, update, click on send, save it, create another request. This will be create employee, it will be post request, click on send, add employee details. We have successfully tested the API endpoints. We'll add all of our API endpoint logic in a separate file and later import it here. So in the root, create a folder named controllers. Inside controllers, create a file name employee.js. Export async function, get all employees, request response next, copy this, paste it. We have 5 API endpoint. Get employee, delete employee, update employee, and finally let's name it create employee. Now let's import it inside employee.js, which is inside routes directory. Import it at the top, import get all employee, get employee, create employee, delete employee, update employee, remove this, add get all employee, get employee, this should be create employee, get employee, delete employee, and finally update employee. Close all of the files. Open employee.js, which is inside controller directory. Let's first download PostgreSQL. Search PostgreSQL download. Click on the first link. Select your operating system and download PostgreSQL and install it in your device. After you have successfully installed the PostgreSQL, SQL Shell is automatically installed in your device. Open it, press enter. By default, it uses database Postgres. Press enter. Default port is 5432. Press enter. I haven't set up my username, so I'll press enter. While you are installing, it will ask you to enter the password. In my case, my password is 1234. It won't be displayed here. After you have entered the password, press enter. Now, to list all of the database that we currently have, type \l. It is short form for list. Press enter. Currently, we have 3 databases: Postgres, template 0 and template 1, template 0 and template 1 are hidden by default. We'll be using Postgres to store our data. Now, to display the table that we have in our Postgres database, type command / display table. It did not find any relation. We'll create this using our Express server. Note your port database, and we'll be using localhost server. Close this. Now, in the root, create .env file. Here, let's specify our variables that we need while connecting with our Postgres database. Postgres user is Postgres. Postgres host, localhost. Database is Postgres. Let's specify the port. Port is 5432. Password. Enter your password. My password is 1234. Close this file. Now, in the root, create a directory, utils. You can name it whatever you want. Inside utils, create a file name. Connect to db.js. Now, let's connect with our PostgreSQL. For that, we have to install pg package. It is short form for Postgres. npm install pg. Import pg from pg. Import env from .env. env.config to load our environment variables. Const required env variables. pg user, pg host, pg database, pg password, and pg port. We'll create a function to check if these environment variables are present in our .env file or not. You can skip this process if you want, as we have already specified all the variables that we need to connect with our Postgres database. Required env variables dot for each variable name. If not in process.env variable name, console log missing required environment variables. Let's specify the variable. Let's use backtick. Variable name. Then we'll exit process.exit1. Otherwise, we'll connect with our database. Now let's set up the database client. Const db new pg.pool. User will be process.env dot pg user. Copy and paste this. Just copy this and paste it here. Host. Database. Password. Finally, port. Remove this. Now let's connect with the database. db.connect. Then log connected with the database. Catch. There is error while connecting with the database. Let's console log. Could not connect with the database. Let's close our server if we could not connect with our database. Now let's listen for the additional error that may occur while connecting with the database. db.on error. Database error. We'll stop our server. Now let's export the query function. Export const query. It will accept text and params. Return db.query text params. Now open employee.js, which is inside directory controllers. Let's import the query which we just exported. Import query from //utils/connect to db.js. Let's run our app. npm run dev. We are getting some error. Open employee.js, which is inside directory routes. This should be employee.js. Let's see the terminal. Cannot find package.env. It should be .env. Open connect to db. This should be .env. All the errors are gone and we have successfully connected with our database. Close this file, open employee.js, which is inside controllers directory. First, we'll check if the table employee details is present or not in our database. If it is not present, then we'll create the table. After creating the table, we'll send the data which is in the table. In our case, we don't have any table in our database, so we should definitely create it. Const response await query. Select. We can use toReg class method to check if the table exists or not in our database. Employee details will be our table name. Let's console log the response. For now, response.send. Let's send OK. Let's try it out. Let's send the GET request. Let's see our console. Right now, today class is null. That means we don't have the table with name employee detail. So let's create it. If response dot rows 0 dot to array class, we are getting this value. Right now it is null. So if it is null, then we'll create the table. Await query. Also, let's not add our SQL query here. Let's create another file where we'll add all of our SQL query and we'll just input it here and pass it inside the query method. For that, inside utils, create a file name SQL query.js. Now let's create the table here. Export const create employee table query, create table employee details, ID, serial, it will be primary key. This serial is same as auto increment. It will add the ID by default. It will start from 1 and keeps on increasing by 1. ID is our primary key. Name varchar, length will be 50, not null. Copy and paste it. Email varchar 50, not null, and it should be unique. Age type will be small int, not null. Minimum age should be 18. So let's add the check constraint. Check age should be greater than 17. Role. Let's define our role in enum. Let's create another query. Export const create role query, create type role type, as enum, manager, developer, HR, shells, and finally intern. Copy this role type. Role will be of type role type, not null. In default, it will be intern. If the role is not provided, by default it will be intern. Salary, decimal, 8,2. Here 2 signifies the precision after a point. So with 8,2 we can have 6 digit and 2 decimal. This should be not null. Save this file. Let's import create role query and create employee table query in employee.js. Import create role query, create employee table query, await query, pass the create role query, After defining the role type, we'll create the table employee details. Await query, create employee table query. Let's get all of the rows. Const rows, await query. Now let's create a query to get the all of our employee. Export const get all employee query. Select all from employee underscore details. Let's import it here. Get all employee query. Copy this, pass it here. Response.status 200.json rows. Remove this. Let's console log the error.message. If there is an error, we'll send custom error message. Let's configure it later. Let's first try this out. For now, let's just console log and leave it. Now, when we hit this API endpoint, we are first checking if the table employee details is present or not in our database. If it is not present, then we are defining the types for the role type, which is this. After the role type is defined, we are creating the table with create employee table query, which is this. After the table is created, we are returning all of the data that are present in the table. So we should get empty array. Let's try it out. Click on send. We are getting empty array because we don't have any data in our table. Now let's create a utility function to send custom error. For that, inside utils, create a file name error.js. Export const create error. It will accept status code and message as its parameter. Let's create error instance. New error dot message will be equal to message error dot status code is equal to status code. Return error. Close this file. Let's import it here. Create error from // utils / error.js. Return. Next. Create error 400. Message will be could not get employee details. Now open index.js. Let's create global error handler. App.use error request response next. Const status code is equal to error dot status code. If it is not present, then it will be 500. Const message error dot message. If it is not present, it will be internal server error. Return response dot status. Pass the status code .json error message. Let's try it out. First, let's throw error from here. Throw new error. Hello. Let's try it out. Click on send. Could not get employee detail. It is working. Let's remove this. Let's try it out again. Empty array. Now let's create employee in our employee detail table. Open SQL query.js. Export const. Create employee query. Insert into employee detail table. Let's insert name, email, age, role, and salary. Values. $1. $1 refers to the first positional argument passed to the script. If you are getting confused, don't worry, it will be clear when we use this query inside the query function. $2 for email, $3 for age, and for role we'll use coalesce function. It will be of role type. If it is not provided, then it will be intern, which is also of role type. The coalesce function returns the first not null argument. So if role type is null, then it will return as intern. Otherwise, it will use the role that we have passed in its argument. $5 for salary. And after the employee is created, we want to return the employee details, which is just created. So add returning asterisk. Open employee.js, try catch. We'll get name, role, salary, age, and email from a request.body. So let's destructure it. Name, role, salary, age, email, request.body. If not name or not role, not salary, age, or email, we will return response.status 400.json header missing fields. Otherwise, we'll add it to the table. Const data, await query. Let's import the query that we just created. Create employee query. Create employee. Let's import it first. Create employee query. Pass it inside the query function. Now let's pass the argument name, email, age, role, salary. It should match here. Name, email, age, role, salary. Name, email, age, role, salary. This name will be replaced in place of $1, and similarly for other. Response.status 201.json data.rows. We are returning the data which is just created using the returning asterisk keyword when we have defined our SQL query. So we'll get the data in data.rows, as one data is only returned, we are specifying 0 index. Let's console log the error.message, return, next, create error, (400) error.message. Let's try it out. Create employee, click on body, raw, JSON, name will be John Doe, age will be 20, email john@gmail.com, role will be HR, salary will be 1234.56. Let's click on send. We have successfully created the data in our table. Let's see what happens if we pass age, that is less than 18. Let's pass 16. Also, the email should be unique, so we should get error saying email should be unique. It violates the constraint age check 20. Now if I click this send, it should give me unique constraint error. Let's add another employee, William, and if we don't provide the role, by default it will be intern. So let's try it out. Salary will be 234.56. Click on send. Missing fields. That is because we are also checking the role here, but we don't need to check role here, so remove it. Save it. Let's try it out. We haven't passed the role, so by default it is intern. Let's get all of our employee. These are the details that we have in our table right now. Now let's get a specific employee. Open SQL query.js, export const, get employee query, select all from employee details, where id is equal to first argument, import it here, get employee query, const id, request.params.id. Let's console log the id. Let's try it out first. Get a specific employee, click on send. We have got the employee id. Const data, await query, get employee query. Let's pass the id. If no data dot rows dot length, if we don't have email data with this id, then the rows length is 0. So if it is not present, then we'll return. Next, create error 400, employee not found, otherwise response.status 200.json data.rows. Let's console log the data. Let's try it out. Click on send. We got the data. Let's check our console. This is the result for the console log data. We are getting rows 0 indexed data, which is this, and returning it. Now let's implement the functionality to delete the employee. Copy this, paste it, delete employee query, delete from employee detail where ID will be $1, open employee.js, import it, delete employee query, copy this, paste it here, just pass delete employee query. Here we should check if data.rows count. It should be row count. If data.row count is null, that means we don't have the employee in our database. Employee not found. Remove this. Message will be deleted successfully. Let's try it out. Get all employee. Let's delete employee with ID is 4. Delete a specific employee. 4. Click on send. Deleted successfully. Here we are checking the row count. Right now it is 1. That means the employee details with ID which we have got from the requested params that ID is found in our table. So the row count is 1. We are checking this, and if the row count is present, then we are sending deleted successfully message. Also, let's see what happens if we try to delete the ID which is not in our employee details table. We should get 0 in data.row count. Let's delete employee with ID 4 which is already deleted. Click on send. Employee not found. Here the row count is 0. Now let's update the employee details. Export const update employee query. Update employee detail. Set name. We'll use the coalesce function. Pass the first argument which will be name. Otherwise email. It first check if we have passed name as this argument or not. If it is not present, then it will use the previous value. Copy and paste it. Email. Age. Role. 2, 3, 4, and we have to also mention the role type. So add a role type. Similarly, for salary, five. Where ID is equal to $6. Let's return the updated data in our database, returning asterisk, open employee.js, try catch. Let's get the ID, const ID, request.params. Let's get the data from request.body, const name, email, age, salary, role, request.body, const result, await query. Let's import update employee query, update employee query, pass it here. Now let's pass the arguments, name, email, age, role, salary, and finally ID at the end. In rows, we can get row count. It indicates how many rows were affected after we have executed the update employee query. If it is 0, that means none of our data were updated, which means the employee with the past ID is not present in our database. In that case, we will send employee not found if result dot row count is 0. That means the above query did not update any data in the database. Return response dot status 400 dot JSON error employee not found. Otherwise, response dot status 200 dot JSON. Let's send the updated data from our database. Result dot rows, pass the 0 index. If there is an error, response dot status 400 dot JSON error dot message. Let's try it out. Get all employee, click on send. We have only one employee in our database. Let's update this employee. Copy this, update a specific employee. It is already one. Click on body, click on raw. Name will be John updated. Let's click on send. John updated. Let's try to update the data which is not present in our database. Let's pass 2. Click on send. Employee not found. Now open index.js. Now let's create a middleware to catch all of the request which is not handled in our app. App.use function request response dot status 404 dot JSON error not found. This means if the API route does not match our endpoint API / employee, then we'll return not found response. This will catch all of the routes which is not defined in our app. So let's pass API slash hello, you can send, not found. Let's revert it back. This concludes our backend functionality. Now let's start building the front end of our app. In the root, create a directory. Let's call it frontend. Navigate to the directory, code dot. Now let's create a React project using Vite. Open your terminal and type npm create Vite at latest. Select React, select JavaScript. Let's install the dependencies with npm install. Let's do some cleanup. Open source directory, open app.css, select all, delete. Open index.css, select all, delete. Open app.jsx, remove all. Create simple React functional component with array_fce. Let's run our app. npm run dev. Now let's change the font of our app. Navigate to Google Font. We'll be using pop-in fonts. Click on Get Code, get embedded code, copy this, open index.html, paste it here. Let's change the title of our app. Open index.css. Let's add some style to the body tag. Minimum height 100 VH. Display flex. Justify content center. Align item center. Copy this font family. Paste it here. We don't need this app.css file. Let's remove it. Font is changed. We'll be using Chakra UI, so let's set it up. Click on Docs, select Vite, copy this command, paste it in your terminal. Now let's install the component that we need in our app. Copy this command, paste it here, add color mode, dialog, field, and finally select component. Components are added to the component directory /UI. Here are the components. Click on styling, dark mode. We have already installed color mode. Copy this. Open app.jsx, main.jsx. Paste it here. Remove this children. Pass app here. Copy this. Paste it here. Right now in my system I have enabled dark mode, so we should be able to see our app in the dark mode. We cannot input it like this. It should be /component/UI/color mode. We have added the color mode in our app. Close all of the files. Open app.jsx. Now let's add this table in our app. Click on components, search table, Click here. Click on code. Copy this. Paste it here. Copy and paste the input. Copy the table data. Right now we have two tables. Remove this for. Size will be MD. Variant will be outline. We don't need key. Now I'll add some dummy data. Let's change this. Copy and paste this. Remove this. Remove this. ID. Name. Email. Age. Role. Salary. Actions. Remove this. Item.id. This will be item.id. Item.name. Item.email. Item.age. Role. For now, for action, let's just display text action. Remove this. See it in our app. Add table cell for salary. Now let's add delete and edit button. Navigate to React icon. Search delete. We'll be using this icon. Select this. Copy this input. Paste it at the top. Copy this. Paste it here. Size will be 20. Search edit. Copy this. Paste it here. You see it in our app. Import stack from Chakra UI/React. Wrap the icons inside stack. Gap will be 3. Now let's change the style of our icon. Let's add class name, icon. Open index.css file. Now let's add some styles to the icon class. Fill will be this as ls value. Transition fill 0.2 second is an icon is to hover. Fill will be white. Cursor will be pointer. Refresh the page. The style is applied. Close this file. Instead of placing table here, let's create a separate component and import it here. Copy this, cut, inside UI, create a file, employee table.jsx, create a React functional component, remove this and paste it, copy and paste this. Copy this import, paste it here. Now import vstack from Chakra UI. Let's import the employee table. Vertical gap will be 6. Align will be flexistat. Let's see it in our app. Refresh the page. Now let's fetch the actual data from our database. For that, in the root, create a folder. Let's name it constant. Inside this, create a file name, global variable.js. Let's define our base URL here and export it. The base URL of our backend is localhost. Port will be 3000 /API/employee const base URL http://localhost 3000 /API/employee export base URL. Close this file. We'll be using React query. Let's see the docs of React query. Click on docs. Click on installation. Copy this and run it in your terminal. Click on quick start. Copy this. Open main.jsx. Paste it here. Remove to-dos and pass the app here. Now in the root, create a folder. Let's call it utils. Inside utils directory, create a file name, query client.js. Now import the query client from React query. Import query client from tiny stack React query. We'll create a client and export it from here. Export const query client, new query client. Close this file. Import query client from /utils/query client.js. Let's see. We are getting some error. Query client provider is not defined. Import query client provider. Copy this. paste it here, remove all, accept query client, refresh the page. We don't have any error. Now open app.jsx. Let's use 10 stack React query and fetch the actual data from our database in this component, and we will pass it in the employee table as prop. Import use query from 10 stack React query. Const is pending, is error, data error, use query, query key will be employee details, query function fetch employee details. Let's create this function, async function fetch employee detail. Fetch employee details. Const response, await, fetch. Let's pass the base URL, import base URL, import base URL from // constant / global variable .js. This is our base URL, and with fetch we are passing the base URL. This means by default it will be GET request, and it will hit this route in our backend where we are returning all of the data that we have in our Postgres database. Const data, await response.json. If response.ok is false, that means we have error, so we'll throw new error, data.error. With this data.error we can get the custom message which is sent by our Postgres database. Optionally you can just add something with wrong here. However, I want to give specific error, so I am using this data.error. If there is no error, we'll return the data. If is pending is true, return loading. If there is error, return error.message. Otherwise, let's just console log the data from Postgres. Data from Postgres database. Select all from employee details. This is the data that I have in my database right now. So in this console log, we should get that data. Let's see it in our app. Refresh the page, loading. Let's see the console. I haven't started my backend server. npm run dev. Let's refresh the page. These are the data that we got from our Postgres database. Now let's pass this data in our table. Right now we are hard coding the data. Here let's pass the data. Data will be data. Open employee table. Remove this. Here we'll get the data. Data.map. Rest can stay as it is. Refresh the page. We have populated the data which we got from our database. Also, if the length of data is 0, that means if we don't have any details in our database, then we should display you don't have any employee data. For that, if data dot length, if this is 0, data dot length is 0, then it will be true and will return h1. You don't have any employee data. Now let's implement the functionality to delete the data from our database. For that, let's add on-click event on this delete button. First, let's create the mutation function. Import use mutation from React query. Const mutation use mutation. Mutation function. It will be an async function. We'll provide the ID while invoking the mutation function. Const response await fetch base URL. To delete the data from our database, we have to hit this endpoint, this, and the request should be delete request. We have to pass the base URL / and the ID of the employee that we want to delete. Base URL, this will give localhost 3000 /API /employee. We should concatenate it with / and then with the ID. Method will be delete. Header, content type, application /JSON, const data, await response.json. If response is not okay, then we'll throw error, data.error. Otherwise, we'll return the data on error. will display a toast error message. First, let's install React.toast. npm install React.toast. Open main.jsx. Import toaster from React.toast. Let's pass the toaster here. Position. Top center. Open employee table file. Import toast. If there is an error, toast.error, error dot response. Let's first log error dot response. For now, I'll comment it out. Similarly, on success, toast.success, employee details deleted. After we have successfully deleted the employee, we have to revalidate our employee details. So import query client, import query client from /util/ query client.js. After deleting, we'll invalidate the query dot invalidate query and pass the query key. Query key, it will be employee details, employee underscore details. app.jsx. Let me verify the query key. It is employee details. Employee details. Let's try it out. Refresh the page. Let's delete this employee. Click on delete. We haven't added on click event here, so let's add it. On click, mutation dot mutate. We have to pass the ID, item dot ID. Refresh the page. Click on delete icon. We are getting undefined. Let's add console log here. Mutation function ID. Refresh the page. Let's see the network tab. Click on delete. The delete request is not being sent. Console. Our mutation function is executing. Base URL / ID. My base URL input is wrong. Sorry, I haven't imported base URL at all. So let's import it. Import base URL. Copy this. Paste it here. Save it. Refresh the page. Let's see the network tab. Click on delete. Delete request. Let's see the response. Deleted successfully. Also, the table was updated after we deleted the data in our database. Now let's check what happens when we get the error response from our backend. Let's return error instead of deleted successfully. Let's copy and paste it here at the top. Random error. Let's try it out. Refresh the page. Click on delete. I'm getting undefined. Let's see the network tab. Click here. This console log is giving me undefined. Let's just console log the error. Refresh the page. Click on delete. It should be error.message. Uncomment this error.message. Let's try it out again. Refresh the page. Click on delete. Random error. This is working. Remove this. Save it. We have successfully implemented the delete functionality. Close all of the files. Now we'll add this add employee button in our UI. When the user clicks on this button, we'll display a dialog where they can input the employee details and add it to the Postgres database. Click on components. Click on dialog. We'll use this dialog. Click on code. Here, copy from the dialog root. Copy up to dialog root. Let's create another component. Let's call it input employee.jsx. Create React functional component. Paste it here. We don't need this key. Remove this. It will be center. Remove this. Add employee. Copy this input. Paste it here. Remove this. It should be /dialog.jsx. Now open app.jsx. Let's import it here. Input employee. Add it above employee table. Let's try it out. Refresh the page. Click on add employee. Now let's change this text, and here we'll add the input component. Title will be add employee. Now input field from /field.jsx. Remove this p tag. Field. Now import input from chakra UI/React. Name will be name. Placeholder. Enter username. Here label will be username, and it is required. This is the input. Now we'll copy and paste it for other field. Copy this, paste it. Email, name will be email, placeholder will be enter email, age, name will be age, placeholder enter age, type will be number, salary, name will be salary, enter salary. Now let's add some vertical space. Import page tag. Import it here. Wrap this field inside the page tag. Gap will be full. Align item. Click start. Refresh the page. Add comma here. Click on employee. These are the input fields. Now for the role, we'll add a select option. For that, let's create a component. Let's call it select role .jsx. Create React functional component. Search select. Let's use this. Click on code. Copy this input. Paste it here. Remove this. // select.jsx. Copy this. Paste it here. Copy this. Paste it here. Let's import it inside input employee component. Import select role. Let's put the select role component here. Refresh the page. Add employee. Option are behind. Open index.css. Select getIndex will be 10,000. Right now the option are behind the dialog, so to move it in front of dialog we are using the getIndex. Open select role. In select content, let's add the class name select. Refresh the page. Click on add employee. Select. It is visible right now. Let's change this. I'll copy and paste our role instead of this. Remove this. These are the role which is accepted in our Postgres database. Now let's map over this role. This will be role. Select all movie. Replace it with role. Role.label. collection will be roles. Select role, refresh the page, click on add. This should be roles. Add employee. These are the roles. Now let's implement the functionality. Let's first get input from the user. For that, open employee component.jsx. Import use state from React. Const info, set info, use state, use state. It will be an object. Name will be empty. Email, empty string. Age, salary, role. Value, data dot info dot, let's close it. This will be info dot name, info dot email, info dot age, info dot salary, on change, handle change, remove this. Let's create this function handle change, set info, return all of the previous info, and update e dot target dot name with e dot target dot value. Let's console log info. Let's try it out. Refresh the page. Click on add employee. A, B, C, D, E, F. Something is wrong in this email input. Info dot email. We haven't specified our onChange event handler here. Refresh the page. Add employee A, B, C, D, E, F. This will be 12. Salary 1, 2, 3. For role, these are the options. Now let's pass the set info function in the role component. Set info, set info, set info, let's add onChange here. onChange, set info, return all of the previous info, and update role with e dot target dot value. Let's try it out. Refresh the page. Click on add employee. Let's select the role HR. Role is HR. Let's select another role, manager, ABC, DEF. It will be 45, salary 123. We have got all of the input. Now when the save button is clicked, we'll send this data to our database. Close this file, close this, close this. Now let's add on click event in the button. Change this text to add. On click, handle submit. Let's create this function handle submit. All of the fields are required except the role field. So let's specify it in an array const required fields name is salary and email. We'll check if all of the required fields are entered by the user. If not, we'll send toast error message. For const key of required fields, if not info, pass the key dot trim, then toast dot error, toast dot error, import toast, import toast from React.toast, toast dot error, missing fields, and we'll return. Let's try it out. Refresh the page. Let's try to click on the add button without passing any of the fields. If I click here, missing fields. Let's pass the username, email. It will be 14. Salary, let's not pass the salary and click on add. Missing field. Salary will be 123. Role is not required, so we should not get toast error. Click on add. We are not getting anything. Let's make this select role. Open select role.jsx. Select role. If all of the fields are provided by the user, we'll send the data to our Express backend and it will be saved to our database. Import use mutation. Import use mutation from React query. Const mutation, use mutation, mutation function. It will be a async function. We'll pass the info. Const response, await fetch, import the base URL, import base URL from dot slash utils class constant class global variable.js. Pass it here. Let's copy and paste. Open employee table.jsx. Copy this. Paste it here. Method will be post. Body JSON.stringify info. Add comma here. Open employee table. Copy this. Paste it here. One error. To start error. Error.message. On success. To start success. Employee details added. After adding the employee detail, we'll invalidate the query. Paste it here. Import query client. Copy this. Paste it here. Now, after verifying that all the fields are provided, we'll invoke this mutation function. Mutation dot mutate. Pass the info. We are only passing the base URL because in our backend, this is the API route for the post request to create the employee. Everything looks good. Let's try it out from the UI. Refresh the page. Add employee. John at gmail.com. Age will be 20. Salary will be 123. Role will be developer. Click on add. Employee details added. Let's see the network tab. This is the post request. We have got the added details from our backend. Now, if the post request is successful, we want to close this dialog. So let's implement that. Let's define a state. Const open, set open, use state. By default, it will be false. In dialog root, open pass the open, on open change, set open, e.open, on success, we'll close the dialog. So set open will be false. Let's try it out. Refresh the page. Click on add employee. Username will be hello. Email will be hello@gmail.com. Age will be 22. Salary will be 456. If we don't provide any role, by default it will be intern. Click on add. Invalid input for enum role type. Right now the role is empty string, which is not accepted by our Postgres database, so we have to update the info. Instead of info, we'll spread all of the info, and the role will be info.role. If it is empty string, by default we'll set it to null. This way, if we haven't selected the role from the select option, it will be null. Refresh the page. Add employee. username will be hello, email will be hello@gmail.com, age will be 23, salary 456. Let's not select any role, click on add, it should be intern by default. Employee detail added, hello@gmail.com, 23, intern. This is the post request and the role is intern. Let's also verify the data in our SQL Shell. One, two, three, four. Select all from employee details. These are the data. Now let's try to add an employee with the email address that already exists in our database. Let's copy this email which already exists in our database. Let's try to add another employee with the same email address. Random. This will be 22. Salary will be 678. Role will be developer. Click on add. As expected, we are getting the duplicate key error message, which states that the email address is already present in our database, so we cannot use this email. Let's change it to hello1 and click on add. Developer hello1. Similarly, also we should revert the state to the original state after the addition is completed in our database. For that, after success, let's change the default state of our info. Copy this. On success, set info, paste it here. Refresh the page. Oliver@gmail.com. We can only insert the employee detail which age is above 18. So if I pass 17 here, we should get an error 678. Role will be developer. Click on add. As you can see, it violates the check constraint that we have added to the age field. Let's make it 19. Click on add. It is added. Add employee. The info state is reset to original, so we no longer see the Oliver data. Now let's implement the update functionality. When we click this, we'll display a dialog similar to this. We'll just change this name to update employee and this button to update, and we'll populate the data of the employee. So we'll be reusing the same component to update the data. For that, we have to make some changes here. Select this dialog trigger, remove it, and here we'll pass the children. Here we'll provide the children. Now open app.jsx. Here we'll pass the dialog trigger, input employee, wrap the dialog trigger with input employee, save it. Now let's import the dialog trigger. Import dialog trigger from component /UI/dialog. Let's check whether it is working or not. Refresh the page. we are getting some error. Button is not defined. Let's import the button. Import button from Chakra UI/React. Refresh the page. Add employee. It is working as expected. Now open the employee table. Open app.jsx. Copy this. Paste it here. Remove this button. Pass this edit icon. Now import input employee and dialog trigger. Import input employee. Import dialog trigger. Let's try it out. Refresh the page. Right now, when we click on add employee and this edit icon, both should give us the dialog. Click here. We are getting the dialog. Similarly, when I click here, I am getting the dialog. However, when I click on this, I want to populate the value in these fields. So I'll pass the data prop to this edit icon. For that, we have to make some changes in input employee. Here, we'll pass the type. By default, it will be add. And we'll pass the data. If type is add, then info will be this by default, as we are adding the new employee detail. Here we'll add a condition. If type is equal to add, then we'll display add employee. Otherwise, we'll display update employee. Similarly, copy this. Here, paste it. It will be add, and it will be just update. Now, if the type is update, that means we'll pass the data. So the default info state should be data. That way, we can populate the input field with the existing data. If you are getting confused, don't worry, it will be clear later. Here, instead of this, remove this. If the type is add, type is equal to add, then the initial state of info will be this. Otherwise, it will be data. Save it. Now, open employee table. Here, data will be item and type will be update. Let's try it out. Refresh the page. Add employee. We are getting add button and add employee. Now if I click on this, we should get this data in the dialog. As you can see, we have got the data. Here, when I click on this edit icon, we are setting the type to update and we are passing the data. Due to this, here the type is update. So in case the type is update, we will get the data, and the info is set to the data that we have provided as the prop from our employee table, which is equal to the equivalent employee detail in our table. So the info state is populated with the table edit icon that we have just clicked. Due to that, we are getting these values. Now, when we click on the update or add button, right now we are just invoking the mutate function to add the employee detail. We have to conditionally check if it is update or add employee, and accordingly we have to invoke the mutation function. For that, up to here everything is same. Now to update, we'll add a new mutation function and we'll check it here and use the equivalent mutation function. We can copy and paste this code. Copy, paste it here. Let's call it update mutation. Base URL. To mutate, we have to pass the ID. So let's concatenate it with a slash plus ID. We'll pass the ID while calling the update mutation.mutate function. It will receive ID as a parameter. Method will be, let's see it, how we have defined our route. It will be put body will be json.stringify info, employee detail updated. Here we'll check the type. If type is equal to add, then we'll invoke mutation.mutate. This will trigger this function. Let's name it add employee mutation. Copy this. If type is add, then we'll invoke this function. Else it will be type of update. So we can copy this and paste it here. This will be update mutation. Also, when we get data and populate it in our info state, by default age and salary is number. So this would give us error. So we'll get error here because we cannot trim the number value. Let's try it out and we'll fix it later. Refresh the page. Click on here. Let me just update. Let's see the console. As you can see, trim is not a function. So we have to change it to string. Then we have to trim it. Let's keep this in a variable. Const info updated. Let's pass this here and here. In the update mutation, we are passing the updated info, in which we are just checking the role, and if the role is not provided, then it is by default null. Here this should be info which we are passing. It is info updated. Here it should be info.id. Let's try it out. Refresh the page. Let's update this. Oliver updated. Let's select role to shells. Click on update. Employee detail updated. Oliver updated, and the role is shell. Let's update this document. bob@gmail.com. Let's change the salary. Let's make it 1K. Click on update. Employee detail updated. Refresh the page. So we have successfully implemented all of the functionality. Let's add employee. Final at gmail.com. This will be 45. Salary will be 6,000. Role will be manager. Click on add. We have added. Finally, we have implemented all of the functionality in our app.